My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. I'm going to break down the UFC Orlando fight card, giving you my DraftKings picks, predictions, and plays. But before I jump in, head on over to WeWantPicks.com and become a member. It's only $10 a month, but you get a DraftKings optimizer. That is a tool that helps you build winning lineups. It'll be pre-populated every Friday afternoon with all the fighters, their projected value scoring, the projected ownership, and you just click a few buttons and you can build one lineup. You can build 150 lineups. You get full access to that for $10. And with the $10, you get that and all of our bets, all of our other fantasy content, DraftKings ownership projections, DraftKings player rankings, salary rankings. You get our best fade, our best dog, our best value play, and our best favorite play. All of that ridiculous content and the optimizer for only $10 a month. $10 a month. There's people charging $20 just for an optimizer. We give you all those things. $10 a month. WeOnPicks.com. Click become a member. 15 fights. So we need to dive in and we need to get this going. Otherwise, it's going to be a 2-hour video. And the first fight on the card is Yasmin Gargui, and she's taking on another striker. So Yasmin is a very good striker. She's got very solid power. She can work in takedowns as well. We didn't see it quite yet in the UFC, but Yasmin is good. She's got a ton of potential, great kicks, very, very solid, powerful striker, especially for that weight class. She's fighting Estela Nunes. Estela Nunes is a professional kickboxer. She is a professional kickboxer. She's transitioned to MMA. She's got 2 losses in the UFC, but she was taken down and beat up in both. These are losses to grapplers. She couldn't let her hands go. And frankly, in that Sam Hughes fight, when she did let her hands go, they looked decent. The biggest issue here is Estela's cardio. So I do think Yasmin wins this fight. I think it's because, though, Estela's going to gas and slow down. Because I think just straight-up kickboxing technique versus straight-up kickboxing technique, Yasmin is not the better fighter. But in an MMA fight, she can work in some takedowns. She's got the better cardio. Estela's not the most, I don't know what the word is for, she doesn't have enough cardio to go more than a round and a half. So Yasmin's going to be the pick, but you and your friends, nobody should be spending $9,300 on Yasmin Gargui in this fight. Then we got Francis Marshall, and he's taking on Marcelo Rojo. This is Francis Marshall's official UFC debut. But he's a very good wrestler. He comes in, he gets the takedowns, a little too comfortable striking at times, but he shoots blast doubles right up the middle, gets those takedowns. Marcelo Rojo is going to be looking for his first UFC win. He's 0-2 in the UFC. This Jourdain fight, he was winning. He was beating Charles Jourdain in that fight, but he took it on short notice. He was up a weight class, and ultimately he gassed. And then Charles Jourdain just poured it on at the end to snatch that win up. And then the Kyler Phillips fight, similar type story. Marcelo's getting taken down, getting sort of controlled and outworked. But Marcelo is a gritty guy. He is a dog. This guy fights for your money. He goes out there and does everything possible to win that fight. He's not a quitter. Pretty well-rounded guy. The problem is he can be taken down. He can be ground out. And that's what Francis Marshall's probably going to do. I'm not a huge fan of putting these UFC debuts in your DraftKings lineup, but $8,800 is actually decent. That's actually a decent play there because I do think he'll get a ton of takedowns. I do think he'll get the control, and I think he'll rack up some sort of meaningful points there. Then we got Natan Levy taking on Genaro Valdez. Natan Levy's $8,900, which is, it's a lot of money. But this is another fight where I think he's probably worth the money. I mean, look at the takedowns. 9 against Breeden, 3 against Garcia. This was a loss, though. Rafa Garcia took him down, controlled him, and wasn't afraid of the jiu-jitsu. But 92 significant strikes, 9 takedowns, control time. He scored 120 points in this Mike Breeden fight. And he's fighting Genaro Valdez, who's also a grappler. And I think he can beat Genaro Valdez. I think he's going to get the takedowns, get the control. I don't want him to wait, though, because Genaro is a grappler. And if Genaro starts shooting first, Natan could have some issues. But I like Natan to get it done. And when he gets it done, he scores an insane amount of points. So he may be worth that $8,900 for you in your lineup because DraftKings loves takedowns, loves control time. And that's what Natan Levy is. That's exactly what he is. Gennaro Valdez, like I said, he is a grappler. He got knocked out by Matt Frivola. That loss is looking a little better, right? We just watched Matt Frivola win. This loss is looking a little better than it did just a few months ago. So Gennaro Valdez is gritty, tough guy, but I think Natan Levy's going to get it done, and I think he's probably worth that money. Then we got Ribas and Tracy Cortez. This is a very interesting fight. Amanda Ribas is the more well-rounded fighter. She can work in takedowns, as we saw, 3 against Caitlin Chikagian. This was a loss. A lot of people think it was a win. She scored 51 points. You add 30 to that for the win bonus, that was an 81-point fight. And I think she probably won that fight. 3 takedowns, good control time. And I think she had more strikes as well. She beat Verna Jandiroba. She lost to Marina Rodriguez. But she's a well-rounded fighter. She can get takedowns. She can get submissions. She's got decent hands. But she's fighting Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez is a very, very good wrestler who is working on her grappling. Tracy Cortez is not going to finish anybody anytime soon, but she's going to get takedowns. She's going to get control. And, I mean, that's what she does. This Melissa Gatto win is a good win. This is a good win because Melissa Gatto is a very good grappler and couldn't catch Tracy in anything. Tracy had, composure, control, bunch of takedowns, a bunch of control time. I think that's what this fight looks like. $8,000, I think she's worth the money. And let's not forget, Amanda Ribas is going up in weight. So Tracy's going to be bigger. Tracy's going to have the wrestling. She's not going to be the better striker. She's not going to be the better grappler, but I think she's good enough to not be submitted while on top, and she's definitely good enough to get the takedown. So I like Tracy Cortez. I like her to get the takedowns, get the control, and I think she's going to get this win and score pretty well for you, especially at that $8,000. Then we got Jonathan Pierce and Darren Elkins. Listen, Jonathan Pierce should be in your lineup. I would do Jonathan Pierce over Natan Levy if they're different price points, but if you're choosing between the two, because Jonathan Pierce is a gritty grappler. He's going to come forward. He's going to get those takedowns. Look at this. 4, 6, 6, 5, 145 points against Amir Khani, 96 points against Rodriguez, 123 against Morales, 134 against Kai Kamanka. This guy's putting up points because he is busy. He is active. He's, been to only 2 decisions in 17 fights. And yes, he's fighting a very tough Darren Elkins. And yes, Jonathan Pierce can be taken down. He was taken down in his last fight against Makwan Amirkhani. But Darren Elkins is not who he was. Darren Elkins is older, slower, taking way too much damage. This Tristan Connolly win was actually a pretty solid win. Scored a ton of points there because he got his wrestling going. At the end of the day, I think Jonathan Pierce is just a much better wrestler than Darren Elkins. Darren Elkins is gritty. He can come forward. Of course, he can get the takedowns, but I see Jonathan Pierce implementing his game plan, and I see him getting it done. And when we look at these high-price fighters, right? RDA is another very expensive fighter in this card. You got to look at their opponents. I think Brian Barbarina, who's fighting RDA, is a better fighter than Darren Elkins, who's fighting Jonathan Pierce. Therefore, take the fighter who has the lesser opponent. So I like Jonathan Pierce to take down, control, and potentially stop Darren Elkins and to score us a bunch of points. Then we got Mark DeCasey, and he is taking on Michael Johnson. Mark DeCasey is a striker. Do not let these last 2 fights fool you. 8 takedowns, 11 takedowns. He is a striker. He's a very good kickboxer. He's accurate. He's got power. He's got speed, well-timed. But in these fights, all of a sudden he said, you know what? I need to be a wrestler here. And he's putting up big points because of that. Mark DeCasey, with the grappling now and the striking he already had, is a very dangerous guy, especially in DraftKings. He can put up some very meaningful scores. He's fighting Michael Johnson. It's easy to say Michael Johnson's a journeyman. It's easy to say he's 1-4 in his last 5. This Jamie Malarkey loss, this was a split decision. This was a very close loss. Some people think he won that fight. He had a knockdown. He had, a little bit of control time against the cage there and on the ground, but he was busy bouncing around. He's primarily a striker, but he's a well-rounded guy. He's been around for 100 years. And look at the slate: Clay Guida, Thiago Moises, Steve Ray, Josh Emmett. But he's beating people like Andre Feely, Artem Lobov. That's a win, right? Jesus. But like Gagey, Elkins, Khabib, he beat Dustin Poirier. This guy has been fighting the top of the top for a very, very long time. So don't just look at the record and say he has 18 losses. He sucks. That is not the case. I do think he's past his prime. I do think he's going to be the slower striker. I do think he's not going to be the better grappler. And shockingly, Mark Diakiese ended up being the better grappler in this matchup. So Mark Diakiese, $9,200. You could probably put him in your lineup, but you can't afford all of these people. And I probably trust, if we look at level of opponent, Michael Johnson's better than Darren Elkins. So I'm going to go with Jonathan Pierce over Mark Diakiese, if that makes sense. Although Mark Diakiese can't hold anybody down, which is why he's getting 8 takedowns, 11 takedowns. So mess with your lineups. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those guys. Then we got Scott Holtzman, Clay Guida. Neither one of them should be in your lineup. Do not spend this money. This will 99% go to a decision. Scott Holtzman is a busy striker. He can work in takedowns every now and then. Hopefully he does, because when he threatens with takedowns, that opens up his hands. But he is a busy striker. He took a year off after being knocked out by Gamrot and Dariush. Those are quality losses. Those actually are quality losses. And he took a year off. That's what you're supposed to do when your brains get scrambled in a fist fight. So luckily, he's not just running right back trying to make it happen. He's not very active. Like I said, I do think he wins, but he's 39 years old. Clay Guida is 40 years old. Clay Guida is busy. Clay Guida is active. But he is slowing down. He's not dangerous at all. Clay Guida has no power in his hands whatsoever. So Scott Holtzman should be able to find a rhythm and let his hands go without really worrying about being knocked out. Because Clay Guida is not that guy. I'm not that guy, pal. So anyway, I think Clay Guida is going to be in the fight. I think it's going to go 15 minutes. I think Scott Holtzman ultimately wins. Neither one of these guys should be in your lineup. Absolutely not. Do not put them in your lineup. I don't think it's a high-scoring fight because I don't think Clay Guida is going to grapple, and I think they're both just going to be a bunch of strikes without a finish. So neither one of them for you. We got Emily Ducati taking on Angela Hill. Do I think Emily Ducati wins? Absolutely. Is Angela Hill the type of fighter you can just count out? No. And that's what's tricky here. Emily Ducati is a very good striker. She got straight pinpoint accuracy, right up the middle, straight punches. She's busy. She stepped up against Jessica Penne on short notice. Put up 77 points. This was short notice. A bunch of strikes, doubled, or maybe even tripled Jessica's strikes in that fight. And she looked good doing it. Former Invicta champion. And then Angela Hill, she's the measuring stick for the division because she's very talented. She's going to beat a lot of people. She's going to lose to some people. But you know she's going to be in the fight. You know it's going to go 3 rounds. You know she's going to stay busy. This Lupe Godinez fight, that was a shocking upset. They don't have her salary here, but she was in the 7,000s. That was a big upset. Lupe was supposed to maul Angela Hill, and Angela Hill got a takedown, had some strikes. Overall, her numbers were lower. So a lot of people think she lost that fight, but she ended up winning it. And that was surprising, but this fight was actually more surprising. Her loss to Verna Jandiroba was not a good loss. That was not a quality loss. That's not a loss that you look at and say, yeah, I get it. Lemos, sure. This was also a close fight, but sure. Torres, sure. Jandiroba, that's not a good loss. So, again, this is another fight that you should probably fade. If you want to throw Angela Hill in there, I mean, she's going to be live as she always is, but, $7,900, you maybe get 70 points out of her, but I don't see that happening. I think Ducati's straight strikes are going to be the difference, and they're going to get it done. Nico Price, Philip Rowe. Philip Rowe missed weight, big time missed weight, and that does change this a little bit because I thought Philip Rowe was just going to work through Nico Price. Nico Price, busy guy, active guy, crazy. He's crazy. He goes out there and he tries to put on a show. He does put on a show, and sometimes at the risk of his own health and at the risk of winning a fight. He is about a year removed from his last fight. He has a knee injury. I think there was a weed suspension in there. I don't know if the weed suspension was here after Cerrone or if it was, in this current layoff. But there was a weed suspension. He blew out his knee, so he needed to get that fixed. He's about a year removed. Listen, if he works in takedowns, he can beat Philip Rowe because Philip Rowe can get taken down by anybody. Anybody can take Philip Rowe down. Jason Witt did it a whole bunch of times. Took him down, held him down, did whatever he wanted to do. The problem is Philip Rowe's got power. He has power in his hands. He is knocking people out. And a guy like Nico Price who just comes forward, takes the shots, he's the type of guy that can get knocked out by a Philip Rowe because Philip Rowe doesn't quit on himself. He'll get taken down 5 times, controlled, and then still throw that power. Listen, Philip Rowe before the scales, I was almost positive he was going to win. He's an underdog, $7,800. Good value in your lineup. Philip Rowe, after the weigh-ins, looking like death, missing weight by 3 pounds, that's a different story. That's a different story. I'm a little torn here. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Probably still a decent play because he's under that 8,000 mark. But if Nico Price is coming in here wrestling heavy, it's going to be a bad fight for him. But keep in mind, this fight's in Florida. Nico's from Florida. And I know for a fact, I have friends that are friends with him. I know for a fact they've got a caravan of people driving up there. This dude is not going to be wrestling and diving at legs in front of his friends and family in a big UFC event. He's going to do what he does, which is smile and throw crazy. So, I think that works against him. So, you guys, maybe you want to change your play after the weigh-ins. Nico Price is still pretty affordable, but I think Philip Rowe is probably still going to get it done. I think I'm going to avoid him in DraftKings, though. Think about Eric Anders, Kyle Dawkins. I think Eric Anders is a very alive underdog here. I am not a Kyle Dawkins fan. Eric Anders hits hard. Eric Anders is a grinder, a wrestler, an athlete. This guy comes out here, almost does what he wants to do. Yes, Jun Young Park, a lot of people think he won that fight. Andre Muniz, this dude's a beast. A beast. This is a quality loss. Muniz's jiu-jitsu is far better than Kyle Dawkins' jiu-jitsu. Far better. A loss to Jotko, hey, I get it. Jotko's just going to stick and move and jab his way around. Mearshart, this is the fight that you can compare to because Kyle Dawkins is a grappler. He's not great. He's got some slick submissions, but he's not great. And Eric Anders out-decisioned him, avoided getting submitted, avoided the takedowns, avoided all that stuff. Did he score well? Not really. But he won that fight. So I think Eric Anders wins this fight, but Kyle Dawkins, he's sneaky, right? The Jamie Pickett sub, that surprised some people. He was the favorite in that, but still, a lot of people counted him out. The Kevin Holland, that was a headbutt. That doesn't count. The Phil Hawes loss was interesting, though, because Phil Hawes, going into this fight, had no cardio. All of a sudden, this fight had cardio for days and did whatever he wanted to do. And Deliza just separated Kyle Dawkins from his consciousness. I'm not throwing Kyle Dawkins in my lineup, not for $9,100. He has no wrestling, so he's not going to be the one who gets it to the ground. He's got decent boxing. He would need Eric Anders to be shooting takedowns and then try to wrap up his neck the same way the Iron Turtle almost did. Almost. Didn't. Almost did. So I don't like Kyle Dawkins. I do think Eric Anders wins this fight. $7,100 is affordable. So if I have some of these massive favorites in there and that's the price I need, then I'll throw Eric Anders. I don't think he's going to score very well, though, but I think he gets a win, and at this price point, a guy who gets a win, potentially worth it. Jack Hermanson taking on short notice Roman Deliza. Jack Hermanson was the last person on the scale. He looked okay, but last person on the scale. He did look relieved, like, oh, thank God, I made it. He's a grappler. He is a grappler. He did just win a striking match against Chris Curtis, which surprised a lot of people, but he's a grappler. And he's fighting Roman Deliza, who is a world champion grappler. World champion grappler. I love Roman Deliza here. He's definitely going to be in my lineup at $7,500. $7,500. He can knock you out with his fists. He can submit you on the ground. I get it. It's short notice. Historically, he didn't have the best cardio, but he's getting it. And, don't let these last two fights fool you. Yes, he has power in his hands, but the reality is he can also be sort of boring and lay on you, like the Allen fight, the Staropoli fight. This Trevin Giles loss is bullshit. He didn't lose that fight. He won that fight. I like Roman Deliza. My only concern for him is if he just starts headhunting. He's been knocking people out. If he just starts headhunting, that's going to be a problem. But this Phil Hawes, you're going to see KO, TKO. That was really a submission, ultimately. He got taken down. He immediately started elbowing the head, got a knee bar, blew out Phil Hawes' knee, let go of it because he's like, oh my God, I just broke this guy's knee. The ref did nothing about it. Phil Hawes got up, and then Roman's like, all right, if I got to hit him in the face, I'll hit him in the face. So my point there is he's ridiculously dangerous on the ground, and we finally saw it in this fight. So Jack Hermanson, very good BJJ for MMA. Roman Deliza, very good BJJ for the world champion guy. So I think Deliza gets it done. $7,500 should be worth it in your lineup. Then we have one of the hardest fights to pick, and I know a lot of people are split here. Sergey Pavlovich taking on Tai Tuivasa. Neither one of these guys should be in your DraftKings lineup. For a cash entry, for GPP, use our optimizer, click some buttons, and then sprinkle both of them. This is a 50-50 fight. The fact that DraftKings and every sportsbook out there drew a line like this makes no sense to me. Both of these guys are heavy-handed heavyweights who have zero wrestling whatsoever. So it's going to be a kickboxing match. Sergey Pavlovich, big, strong, fast. Tai Tuivasa looks a little sloppy, but a brick for a head, and he's got leg kicks and power. I think Tai Tuivasa wins this fight, but I am not putting Tai Tuivasa in my lineup, and neither should you. Because one of these guys is going to get knocked out and score 0 points whatsoever. And that's not a risk you can take in a cash lineup. Cash lineups can be a little riskier than GPPs, but you can't just give up a slot right out of the gate. Yes, you could score 120 points, but you could also score 0, and I think it's a 50-50. I would fade both of these guys. As much as I think Tai wins, I would fade both of these guys. Look at this fight. Look at this fight. This went to the third round, 22 points. That's the problem with the heavyweights. You're not going to get anything out of a loss. So fade them both. Do Monkey Knife Fight Knockout Kings instead. Go ahead and watch that video. Then we've got Nicola versus Schnell. Schnell weighed in, had to shave his head, looked like absolute shit. Absolute shit. Mateusz Nicola was going to win this fight no matter what. That poor weigh-in by Schnell only helps. He's a very good striker. It's a little robotic, but it's good. It's technical. It's there. He can also grapple. He's a busy guy. I think he gets it done. Matt Schnell has very slick submissions. He can catch you in something. He also is like durable as shit. In this Sudamergy fight, he was almost out, was laying there like he was out, and then rose from the dead, came back, and then won this fight, that was incredible. That's not going to happen again. You don't have two of those in your lifetime. That took years off of his life. It's not going to happen again. Mateusz Nicola is going to win this fight, most likely by finish. Therefore, he should probably be in your lineup, especially as bad as Schnell looked at the weigh-ins. Co-main event, Rafael dos Anjos taking on Bryan Barbarina. I think Rafael dos Anjos wins this fight, and I think he scores really well doing it. I think it looks something like this, right? These are 5 rounds, though. But I think it looks something like this. A bunch of takedowns, a bunch of control. I think he's going to take Bryan Barbarina down probably 3 times, 1 each round, and just hold on to him and score a bunch of points like that. He is coming off this knockout loss to Fiziev, but he had 2 takedowns in that fight. And that is impressive because Fiziev is not a guy that people easily take down, especially when he knows that's what you're going to do. So Rafael dos Anjos, only 2-3 in his last 5, but look at these losses. Current champion. Kes is massive and also a grappler. Beat Felder. Beat Moicano. Everybody's loving Moicano. Granted, that was short notice, but he beat Moicano. And then, the Fiziev fight, could have argued that he was winning until he wasn't because of the takedowns and a little bit of control time he had. So I like Dos Anjos, but Bryan Barbarina is a tough guy. He just knocked out Robbie Lawler. Incredible volume and pressure. Just never stops on his feet. But he does get taken down. He's got like a 46 or 50-something % takedown defense. He does get taken down, and that's really all that matters in this fight. He did lose to Jason Witt, and that's what I'm talking about. Taken down, controlled, and that's exactly what I think happens here. So the problem is Dos Anjos is $9,600, and I do not think he gets a finish. So I think he'll score incredibly well for your lineup. And if you're playing around with it, you're looking at him, you're looking at a Natan Levy, you're looking at a Jonathan Pierce. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those guys. So maybe go with who you think is going to get the stoppage out of the 3. Or who has the worst opponent out of the 3, and that's probably Jonathan Pierce. But Dos Anjos should win this fight. Then we got main event, Kevin Holland, Wonderboy Thompson. The pricing's about even. And I feel like this is going to be one of those rare fights where maybe you don't do the main event. I get it. It's 5 full rounds. I don't think there's a stoppage in this fight. I think it goes to a decision. And I think it's a 5-round decision of jabs, a kickboxing 5-round decision. I do think Wonderboy wins this fight. And let's see. 102 points against Jeff Neal, 96 against Luque. That was in 3 rounds. He could score well. And at $7,700, you are getting a discount there. And it is 5 rounds. I don't know what necessarily I'm going to do here. I probably will play Stephen Thompson, but this is the type of card where we've got such massive favorites that can score some very real points that, we got Roman Deliza at $7,500, a little less expensive than Stephen Thompson. So that's a little bit of maneuvering going on here, but I think Wonderboy wins this fight. I think he's the more technical striker. I'm glad that both of these guys are finally getting to fight other strikers because their last couple of fights were grapplers. Bilal Muhammad took him down late on him. Gilbert Burns took him down late on him. When he finally had a couple of strikers, he did what he does, which is outstrike people. And I think that's what he's going to do to Kevin Holland. So Wonderboy Thompson, I think, gets the win. $7,700 is actually a pretty good price point. It is. So we'll see if he's going to be in my lineup. He's definitely somebody that should be considered for a lineup. You're at the 7,000 price point. You got a 5-round main event. You should definitely consider that. Guys, become a premium member. It is only $10 a month. You get the optimizer, you get player rankings, you get DraftKings ownership projections, plus our bets, plus our FanDuel content, our prize picks content. You get all of that stuff for only $10 a month. Just go to WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member at the top.